FEMA official ordered relief workers to skip houses with Trump signs. That is not very inclusive. That is actually extremely exclusionary behavior. And apparently, this is not the first time, obviously, that this has gone down. Let's get into it. Here we go. This was first broken last Friday. The story was first broken last Friday by the Daily Wire. So, whistleblower. It's almost unbelievable to think that somebody in the federal government would think that's okay. And yet you've been hearing about this story. Oh, yeah, those Trumpers, they're violent people. So we just move on past anybody with the Trump sign. I mean, that is the exact opposite of what FEMA is supposed to be all about, right? Disaster relief. Let's not give any relief to those with political ideas or ideology that we don't agree with. A federal disaster relief official ordered workers to bypass the homes of Donald Trump supporters as they surveyed damage caused by Hurricane Milton in Florida, according to internal correspondence obtained by the Daily Wire and confirmed by multiple federal employees. A FEMA supervisor told workers in a message to avoid homes advertising Trump. And we've got this not only from the supervisor, but we've got, we'll take a peek at it. Let's see if I've got it right here. Yeah, there it is. Avoid homes advertising Trump. I mean, it's just absolutely amazing that this is even a thing. So a FEMA supervisor told workers in a message to avoid homes advertising Trump as they canvassed Lake Placid, Florida, to identify residents who would qualify for federal aid. Internal messages viewed by the Daily Wire revealed. The supervisor, Marney Washington, relayed this message both verbally and in a group chat, Microsoft group chat, nice, used by the relief team. Multiple government employees told the Daily Wire. This is an ongoing occurrence. This is a thing. Hey, don't like those Trumpers. Orange man bad. Could you imagine if Republicans did that to somebody in a federal relief operation? Could you imagine the outrage from the left? It would be front and center news 24/7. CNN would create a separate channel for it, right? And yet, what do we get? Get a couple of articles and, she got fired. Yeah. Government employee told the Daily Wire that at least 20 homes with Trump signs or flags were skipped from the end of October and into the November due to the guidance, meaning that they were not given the opportunity to qualify for FEMA assistance. Images shared with the Daily Wire show that houses were skipped over by the workers who wrote in the government system messages such as Trump sign, no entry per leadership. Wow. I mean, and we've heard of this going on. Trump's called it out, and the New York Times said, oh, that's not a debunked theory. Debunked theory. Well, here it is. It's unclear whether the same guidance was issued elsewhere in the country. The employees were part of a Department of Homeland Security surge capacity force team, meaning they volunteered from other Department of Health Service agencies to help an understaffed FEMA as it dealt with the second major hurricane in a span of just a few weeks. So, you know what's crazy is, says fired FEMA employee says instructions to skip Trump homes were part of a colossal avoidance policy. This was an ongoing deal. And then the individual that was fired, the Marney Washington, she went on one of the podcasts that the super mayor went on. And basically said, yeah, the Trump people, they're really violent. So we just avoid them. They're really, really violent people. And it's like, really? I don't see that. Maybe they are asking for help and you should consider whatever it is you could do to help them out. So here's our second article we're going to take a look at. Yeah, here's that federal that federal employee who is, FEMA preaches avoidance first and then de-escalation. This is not isolated. This is a colossal event of avoidance, said Washington 39. This is ongoing. This is a real thing. Not just in the state of Florida. You will find avoidance in the Carolinas. Man, they get smacked, don't they? It's the one thing about the East Coast. West Coast, we just don't have hurricanes. We don't have tornadoes. Well, we might have a big tsunami at some point in time, or we might have a massive earthquake going down the St. Andreas Fault, but yeah, don't have that kind of weather. A female official backed up Washington's claims, telling the Post the agency's practice of skipping Trump-supporting houses or avoiding white or conservative-dominated disaster zones altogether is an open secret at the agency that's been going on for years. That doesn't make me feel very warm and fuzzy. Discrimination is everywhere, right? It just really is. It's a matter of what side are you on? Oh, yeah. I mean, those Trumpers, they're terrible people. They're awful human beings. They don't deserve any FEMA money. So, and it's absolutely nuts, and yet it's a reality. And it's taking this kind of, folks reporting the news. Hey, this isn't accurate. This isn't right. This doesn't make any sense. What's going on? Congressional Republican lawmakers whose states were in the path of the back-to-back storms have vowed to take swift action to determine whether the agency abdicated its duties for political reasons, announcing plans to launch multiple investigations. Where's that going to go? Where's that going to go? There's so much of this in the federal government, and we see it every time. We've got these transitions of presidents. Well, they did this and they said this and, go like this. But I feel like there's a real target on anybody related to anything conservative, Trump related, Republican, whatever. And this just kind of goes to validify how much of that is out there. Washington accused FEMA of lying after the federal agencies said that she had no authority to give the directive to disaster relief workers who were canvassing homes in Lake Placid, Florida in the wake of last month's Hurricane Milton. Somebody did. And they're fired. And she was fired as well. The FEMA official who spoke on the condition of being anonymous said Washington likely received very clear guidance from her supervisors. I mean, it's in writing, right? It's in writing. It's in a group chat, a Microsoft group chat. I have heard from other entities that they're serving in North Carolina that there was clear guidance saying to be mindful of the types of people who are in the Western North Carolina. They're largely Republican, very conservative, very derogatory sorts of references in their culture. Based on what? And is that a reason to not serve somebody? They vote for Trump. Don't like them. Can't get their house back altogether. Their property? Screw those guys. They don't believe in what we do. But we're FEMA. We're a bipartisan deal, right? Not so much. FEMA employees did receive threats in the wake of Hurricane Helene and Milton as a result of misinformation. And a sheriff in Tennessee reported that an armed group threatened aid workers. However, FEMA employees are trained to deal with threats and disasters, the employee said, adding that the agency's real motive in avoiding certain areas in need is equity. How is that equitable? See, that's why we just got to just absolutely shit can that whole DEI thing. And that's just absurd. It's absurd. The source went so far as to say it's not crazy to say the agency has been instructing personnel to exclude white communities. That's racism. It's just racism, straight up and down. Oh, no, don't go service. They're angry people. Don't even knock on their door. Now you're going to hear stories about, this guy yelled at me. You know what? They just had their house destroyed. Maybe they're a little upset that it's taking you forever to get there. Maybe they're upset that we're spending billions, sending billions to Ukraine and billions to Israel, and we can't work out how to fix up our own backyard. Maybe there's that. Maybe they have a right to be upset. You know what I mean? But even still, this instruction of, white people, they're bad. Well, I'm sad for the 4 years that we have gone through for the entire agency, because emergency management is something you don't just stumble into, something you have a passion for because you believe in the mission space across the board, and we've set ourselves back. Now, I don't believe this is news for reasonable people. This isn't news for crazy lunatics, right? I don't believe the majority of FEMA folks that are out there trying to help people, they don't get into that line of work to be discriminatory. I think there's a select few, but it's enough where you continually hear of this kind of stuff going on. So, however, FEMA has denied Washington's claim. She told Martin that she suspected her superiors would not be forthcoming if asked about any official policy that discriminates on political ideology grounds. Yeah, since when do we discriminate on a federal basis on political ideology? You've got to be kidding me. But this is ongoing, isn't it? This isn't the first time. This isn't the first rodeo. I love this. Best practices. This is that Microsoft. Best practices. Avoid Holmes advertising Trump. It couldn't be any more clear. It's nuts that this is, this is what we're working with, right? So we move on to New York Times has yet to issue correction for wrongly claiming Trump falsely accused FEMA avoiding supporters storm ravaged homes. If you're enjoying this content, I'd love to have you check out reasonabletv.com. That's our members only. We just released a video there. Venezuelan migrant arrested 13 times in a year. Could you imagine if, say, I don't know, a Trump supporter did that? Conservative, a Republican, 13 times in a year? How would that go? Yeah. Would they be deported to Florida? Probably. Yeah. Anyway, what's that going to cost you? What's that look like? $3.99 a month. Let's see if I can get there. $3.99 a month, $39.99 a year, yearly. You get 2 free weeks before you get into that. And, got a lot of content on there. And there's some other stuff. You get some discounts and stuff, but thanks for checking it out. Let's watch this little video.
First, to get your reaction when you heard this news about FEMA and avoiding what appears to be some 20 homes in Florida.
Well, to say that I was surprised would be a lie. I don't necessarily want to demean or demonize every FEMA employee or worker that's out there. I think there are a lot of them that have a good heart that want to help people. The question that it leads me to is to ask the question of what sort of culture has been established in order for, FEMA personnel on the ground, or leadership for that matter, to provide this sort of instruction to FEMA personnel that want to provide help. And more so, I had an interaction with local FEMA officials as well, and they wanted to help people. And one of the interesting thing is it was stated that, hey, we can't have fingerprints on this, which I think it leads back to the actual question, which is what sort of culture and what sort of fear is there in place at some of the lower levels of FEMA personnel where they're afraid they're going to lose their job if they don't speak up against actions that are blatantly not aligned with what the organization is supposed to be doing.
That are blatantly illegal, that are blatantly, discriminatory. It's absolutely mind-blowing. And yet this is ongoing. This whole notion that, we just got to all get along. Well, that's not how reality works, right? I don't really like you, therefore I'm not going to help you out, even though your house just, got destroyed. Tough luck. Tough titties. New York Times fact check that claimed Donald Trump lied when he said FEMA deliberately neglected the storm-ravaged homes of his supporters has been debunked. But you'd never know it. The paper of record has yet to publish a correction, even though the disaster agency last week revealed Trump was right all along. So many of these things that initially come out, Trump said this, it's been since debunked. And then, it takes a long time for the information to actually come out. One of my predictions is the eating of pets in Springfield, Ohio. There will be something that'll come out like 6 months from now. And by then it'll be so far down the road, it'll be a video of some family just sitting around having a big barbecue of, Fluffy the cat and Sammy the dog. It'll be one of those deals. And by then it'll be like, it was real. And all those people that we said it wasn't real to, so sorry. By then it doesn't matter, right? It doesn't matter. It's like the Hunter Biden laptop. This sounds like Russian disinfo campaign. And you're like, Really? You've had the damn laptop for a year. The FBI and Department of Homeland Security had it for a year. You guys knew it was real. And then you let this statement come out. That kind of thing. In this case here, this, with this story from the Daily Wire, I mean, it just goes to show this is out there. An October 4 Times article entitled "Trump's False Claims About the Federal Response to Hurricane Helene" has not been revised and remains published online, even though it says the president-elect falsely accused the Biden administration of neglecting areas that had voted for Republicans. So, the New York Times, it used to be a legit, back in the day. I remember growing up and my grandma, Nana Grace, what we referred to her as, because she was too young when I was born to be called grandma. So we went with Nana Grace. I think she was 42 or something when I was born. Young, right? Young. So Nana Grace was always trying to get me a subscription to the New York Times. And I was like, what in the hell would I do with that? Because she viewed it as the ultimate in journalism, right? Ultimate in journalism. And I think a lot of people have that idea. In my dealings with media and reading all of the stuff that's come out of all these millions of news sources, I have to filter through with what I believe is accurate. And the New York Times is probably one of the least accurate and most biased reporting of news that is out there. Now, I say this fairly often, even a broken clock is right twice a day. Every now and then, they'll hit a homer and they'll be there, Johnny on the spot, and they'll cover a topic and I'll be like, yeah, okay, all right. But then the other 10 articles they put out are just so blatantly liberal biased that I'm like, yeah, they're still a piece of crap, but they got that one right. MSNBC on the chopping block, along with the Oprah network. You're going to see all kinds of media just doing some massive gyrations, because the amount of money that they are paying their newscasters it's not a good investment with their returns, because their numbers are just toot, 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 and Fox's numbers just go toot, 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 right back up. It's kind of crazy. And then all these ridiculous podcasters out there taking a little piece of the pie, right? So thank you for being here. The 39-year-old Washington also alleged the cruel edict verbally to workers on the ground. She yelled at them and said, no Trumpers, they get no help. One of those workers wrote a message in FEMA's tracking system. Trump sign, no entry per leadership. Fired FEMA employee says instructions to skip Trump combs were part of colossal avoidance policy. This is policy. This isn't a one-time off deal. This is ongoing. I'm not saying everywhere, but you're hearing enough of this and we've got enough evidence here where you're like, okay, all right, how big of a scope is this issue? That's what I would want to know. That's where I would head with it. Need to clean this up. Need to fire the people. You know what? We need to do some Trump training. They need to be trained on how to handle Trump folks. Now, the Roland Martin I remember that I was watching the video. Roland Martin is the podcast that this fired employee, Marney Washington, went to. And she said, yeah, Trump people yell at us and they're not nice. Okay, but you still, I'm sure there are some Democrats in there too that are just like, where the F have you been? My home got torn down, and people in crisis, people in conflict. Does that give you the right to not distribute federal funds where they're most needed? That's the huge question. No, of course it doesn't. But this kind of stuff just goes on, and, Trump says something, and of course it's misinformation if Trump says it, but now we got the Daily Wire, and now we're waiting for that tail end of, hey, maybe you need to issue an apology, but that's not going to happen. Speaking on an episode, here it is, of the Roland Martin Unfiltered podcast Monday, Washington said her instructions complied with FEMA protocol to avoid homes determined to be hostile or dangerous to workers. They all allege that these actions were made in my own recognizance and that this was for my own political advances. However, if you look at the record, there is what we call a community trend. And unfortunately, it just so happened that the political hostility that was encountered by my team, they just so happened to have the Trump campaign signage. Okay. All right. So I just read all that. Does it make it right? Does that mean you can do that? I mean, you're trained in de-escalation, right? How about you whip out those skills? Now, these people need some Trump training. They do, on just how to handle normal human beings that maybe are a little bit more conservative. And you know what? Just won the recent election in a landslide. How about that? And not only the election, they won the popular vote, Senate, the House. I mean, what else? The Supreme Court. So you need some Trump training. You need to be trained on how not to be discriminatory. That whole DEI thing that probably got you where you are. Yeah, I need to look into that and go, well, does this follow our DEI policy? Exclusionary policy, or is it inclusive? Yeah, so many questions, right? Washington claimed that her instructions were given after team members had been verbally and physically threatened by hurricane victims with signs in support of the former president. She said her instructions followed FEMA's avoidance and de-escalation policy. You're honestly telling me that nobody that supported Joe Biden got upset with you ever? You know what I mean? Make this make sense. It just doesn't make any sense. Nope, it was all from Trumpers. Okay. Maybe these are areas where there's large portions. This is Florida, after all. Got a lot of folks, and just because they support Trump and maybe they're upset, there's no correlation there. There's no correlation there. And there's been numerous complaints. I mean, it was a whole thing as that was going on. Hey, they're not getting the aid that they need. Meanwhile, we're sending billions to Ukraine and all kinds of other countries throughout the world. Hundreds of millions and billions, and you know what I mean? And yet FEMA here in our own backyard is like, nah, they like Trump. No go. Crazy stuff. Wild stuff. All right. That's it for me. If the New York Times does a follow-up, I'll let you know. Make sure you're subscribed. Do all that good stuff. I'll catch up with you in the next one. Bye for now.